Okay, this second video is going to be about basic house designs, and this is like the floor plan of the house as opposed to the previous video, which was the style, the exterior style of the house. Uh, and basically, there's four different types of houses, designs for as far as floor plans go. And the factors that come into play on choosing what type of floor plan to design or to build is how much space is available for the house. How big is the lot? Is it a large lot, small lot? Does the lot slope? Does the property slope? There's a contour to it. What's around it? Is there a lake that you want to be able to see or access? A pool? Is there a scenic view that you want to highlight in the construction? What's the climate like? Is it very hot and dry? Does it rain a lot? Does it snow a lot? Things like this. And then the personal preferences of the homeowner. Do they like to entertain outside a lot? Do they like to cook and entertain? Do they very seldom entertain? Are they handicapped? Are they older? Um, Things like this will come into play as we're looking at what type of design that we want to use. Okay, so our four types are the one-story ranch, the 1.5 story, two-story split levels, and then we're going to talk about traffic circulation right at the very end. So the one-story ranch design is just that. Typically, it's a one-story house. It can be on a crawl space, can be on a slab on grade, or it can be on a basement foundation. But they're typically everything is on one level. Um, One of the big advantages to this is that it lends itself to indoor-outdoor living space. So you could have a deck or a patio or a pool or something like that, out back. There's no stairs, with the exception of maybe a basement. So it's popular with people who might be older or maybe they're handicapped and can't negotiate stairs. Typically, it has a low slope roof, um, larger overhangs to shade the walls from the sun, and it being shorter, it makes outside maintenance a lot easier, and construction is easier also because you don't have to build a lot of scaffolding to get up to work on the second floor. Um, don't have to lift stuff quite so high. Uh, here, here we have an example of it on a slab construction. You still have a footing that the slab and the concrete rest on. Here in Georgia, typical slab construction is not really done this way, but we do what's called a turn down slab, in which the floor, the concrete floor, and the footing is poured simultaneously, and they're monolithic together. So it looks a little bit different than that. Let's see. Um, a ranch house usually costs more to build than other designs because all of your area has to have a foundation of some kind. Okay, so they have a larger footprint, which means they require a larger lot. And heating and cooling may be a little difficult because of the large amount of area that's involved. Here we have a one-story ranch with a basement. Okay, um, here in the southeast, we don't have to have basements. The footing right here, the footing has to rest on soil that does not freeze. So here in the southeast, that's only a few inches at the most, 1 foot down. But if the further north you go, uh, Dakotas, Wisconsin, Minnesota, places like that, you just about have to have a basement in order to get below the frost depth so that the footing is on, soil that is never disturbed or frozen. One-story ranches typically have a lot of hallway space because the house is large and long. So design has to kind of be thinking about how can I group things together to minimize the amount of hallway space. Okay, so the 1.5 story typically is an attic type space with dormers. You remember some of the previous video, a lot of those houses were 1.5 stories. Typically, it'll have dormers so that you've got light and ventilation. They're a little more economical to build than the ranch because you've got additional space that doesn't have to have a foundation. Now you do have additional framing involved to use that space and get up there. Um, okay, so yeah, 1.5 story. So here's an example of a 1.5 story with dormers across the front of the house, and we know that this is actually actual living space because here on the edge of the house we've got a window on the gable end that shows into those particular rooms. Whereas over here, over the garage, it's probably not actual space that's usable or livable because the height is it's so short. Okay, because you figure the ceiling of the first floor is right in here. So it might be a bonus room, but more than likely it would be like for storage, in the attic space. Here's an example of a house, the company I used to work for, we built. It appears to be a 1.5, but it's actually just a 1-story ranch because these dormers are false. There is no space up there, and one of the things that you can tell is we've got no window here on the gable end, but we've got attic ventilation up in that space. So it just appears to be a 1.5. Here's another example of a 1.5 house. It's got actual living space up in here. And they break it up. It's kind of an L-shaped house with a little bump out here, so it's kind of broken up. It looks real nice with these additional gables on the front of the house. So a two-story can be built on a basement. It can be built on a slab on grade or on a crawl space. Depends on where you're located at and your weather conditions and things like that. Typically, basements are not considered living space, even though they may end up being finished, but they're typically not considered living space. A two-story requires a smaller lot because you got double the area of the house, but only a smaller foundation or a smaller footprint. Um, Looking at my notes here. Construction is a little more difficult because now you have to lift everything for the second floor up. You have to build scaffolding in order to work on the outside, and maintenance becomes more difficult because it makes it hard to reach the roof and the overhang and the upstairs windows to do work around there. Some of these houses look like just big boxes, but some architects can play with the designs a little bit and give them, improve the way they look by giving them additional gables or bump outs or things like that so that they don't all just look like a bunch of boxes sitting around. So here's an example of a two-story house on a small lot. The houses are kind of close together. And it's a fairly nice looking house. Company I used to work for, we built a neighborhood like this, uh, where the houses were 2 stories. They were narrow but long, had very small lots, and every one was designed to fit into that neighborhood. So they had a very nice look to them. Um, Even though they were close together, it still turned out looking pretty nice. Um, Here's an example, of ones that were popular throughout the Midwest. Okay, and the brick on the side of the house is not really brick; it's a stone that is cut and stacked. So it's got a lot of thermal mass to it, but it's a nice looking 2-story house. Okay. Here's another 2-story, and this one, it looks really nice because it's got this 1.5-story gable here on the garage end. So this would be kind of a bonus room area maybe. Full 2 stories, but see they got a little inset right here, a little bump back and a bump back here for the entryway, and another bump back over here. Um, some some gables on the front of the hip roof. So it's not just a box, but it's been kind of spruced up a little bit. It looks very nice. Okay, our split level designs. There's four types of split levels. There's the side to side, there's a front to back, a back to front, and then a traditional front entry split level. And it all depends on the slope of the land that the house is built on as to which direction that you would use it. Okay. Um, they make pretty efficient use of their space and they have very little hallway, but you have to go up or down steps to go everywhere in the house. So some people love them, some people do not. Okay, it's pretty simple. The lowest level, there may be a basement, there may not be a basement. It all depends on the style and the design of it. Um, but your heating and cooling stuff, your furnace, your water heater, things like that, typically would go in the basement or the lower level. Okay, often maybe even in the garage area if you have a drive-in garage with it. So here's an image of the traditional front entry split level to where you go up the steps to go in the door, and then once you go in the foyer, you have to either go up steps to get to, you know, the upper level, or you go down steps to get to the garage level and this level over here. So if you like steps, it's good. If you don't like steps, you'll hate these kinds of houses. So here's an example of the front to back variation in which the front or the street side of the house is a one story, the back is a two-story. And so this works out nicely because you could have a patio off of the back for, you know, outdoor living kind of stuff. Um, Looking at my notes. Yeah, I mean, you know, they're all pretty similar. It just depends on what direction you're looking at. And so here's the back to front, in which the front of the house is a two-story, the back of the house is a one-story. So it all depends on which way your lot is sloping. Heating can be a problem in split levels. So often you would have to use zone type heating and cooling. And handicapped and older people will not like these houses at all because everywhere you go, you have to have stairs. Okay. Traffic circulation. We should always consider this when, you know, in designing a house. Um, how does traffic flow through the house? And if you think about your daily routine where you live, when you wake up in the morning, where's the first place you go? Okay, typically go to the restroom. And then from there, you might make your way to the kitchen, things like that. If you have guests coming over and they come into the front door, where do you typically go? Typically, you move into the living room or maybe the family room. Um, when you're cooking and eating, okay, you cook in the kitchen and you may eat in the breakfast nook or the dining room. So those need to be close together. After eating, where do you typically go? So often from the dining room, you'd move to the living room or into the family room. When you're bringing groceries home, do you park in the garage? Do you park, you know, outside the garage? But you got to carry all those groceries to the kitchen. So it's good to have the garage close to the kitchen so that you can flow through there. I'm sure we've all been in houses or apartments that the traffic flow just does not work very well. And you wonder why in the world did this person, you know, put this here? But those are some things to consider in that